Hello there, and welcome to the CP7 Podcast. My name's Palm.
And I'm Andy.
And together, we are Chrono Passion 7. Hello, and welcome to another very special episode of your favourite watch-related podcast. Today, we're going to do things slightly different. On the contrary, actually, because today's subject we're going to begin with is Contrarian watches. And our guest has been known to be quite the contrarian, not just through the many articles he's written, he's also got the word tattooed on his arm. Without further ado, let me introduce our very special guest, formerly from Time and Tide, currently works for Fratello, Oracle Time, and many other publications. We have Thor Svaboe. Welcome, Thor. How are you?
Thank you. I'm doing well. Thank you for having me.
Very, very well. Welcome, Thor. So before we get into the main topic of today's show, the most important question always is, what's on your wrist? What are you wearing today?
Today, I'm wearing what will be probably part of my contrarian status, which is the Aera D1 Diver, a British-designed, Swiss-manufactured brand, a diver's watch.
Ooh, very cool. Looking forward to hearing a little bit more about it. And Palm, are you joining the theme?
I am the anti-contrarian because I'm very mainstream and very run-of-the-mill, but I love what I love. So today I am wearing my Rolex GMT Master 2 BLNR, the Batman. It's the Generation 1. The year this was made was in 2013, which was the first year it was put into production. So that's what I've got on my wrist. And Andy, how small are we going today?
So I'm not going ultra small. I've gone for 35mm. I've gone for a Gruen Skin Diver. Yeah, really cool little vintage piece. Quite hard to come by, actually, with the sharp tooth indicators. Really nice. The loom hasn't fallen out, which is always a good sign. And it's keeping great time. Really enjoying it, actually, as a daily, especially on the tropic strap in the climate of Barcelona. It works really well. So, yeah, really enjoying this one. So I've been wearing it quite frequently. So that's what's on my wrist.
Was that a Zodiac? Was it?
You know, that's
No.
a great question. So not Zodiac, it's a Gruen. However, I believe it shares exactly the same skin diver case as the Zodiac. That era of time, right? Where they all had the same, yeah.
They had the same look.
It's funny. I actually thought you said I'm wearing a ruined skin diver.
Ah, ruined. Not yet. Give it time.
Ruined. He's ruined it. Yeah.
It could happen. It's not water resistant.
He won't have it long enough to ruin it, so don't worry. Right, so Thor, give us a little bit of background in a bit about yourself, just for our listeners who, I mean, we know you, but they want to get to know you. So let us know about yourself.
I'm based just outside Oslo and consider myself half British. My dad lived in the UK, no longer with us, bless his soul. He lived in the UK for about 40 years. And I have a long background in sales, and so did a pivot during the pandemic to writing about watches. I've basically been doing that for 4 or 5 years, and now I have a supposed sales job, but basically I do about 70% of my day now is writing about watches and doing some PR consultancy on the side. And with me being past 40, I would have been terrified if anyone told me that like 5 years ago, but I'm enjoying it hugely.
Well, so you've basically got 2 jobs, and you've got like a dream job, writing articles for some of the top publications, including GQ. So how did that come about?
That is a long story. Basically, I had a YouTube channel that we will not mention the name of because it was in about 2018-19 about watches, and that sort of led me onto a Scandinavian publication. I did some articles for them on a pro bono basis for about 6 months. I finally got my first watch sent to me from a manufacturer, and it was a Linde Verdelin, a Nord integrated bracelet diver watch, which was super charming. I actually pitched that to an Australian publication you've mentioned. That was my proper story with the shooting it and writing about it, and then that just took off the summer of 2019, 20 or something. And then Then the pandemic came, which to me was a wonderful time of home office, where I had a national sales manager job with a big German appliance company, while at the same time I wrote about 200 articles on watches that year, and then moved to Fratello, and then just carried on from there. Basically, I write something every day. I do about 3 or 4 articles a week for, as you mentioned, Fratello, Oracle Time in the UK, GQ. I also do now work for Revolution. I do Wallpaper magazine, and I've done some stuff for Sharp magazine in Canada, in addition to some PR work on the side. So yeah, I'm keeping busy and enjoying it, and still managing to keep the enthusiasm for watches, which I thought might fade when I'm working with it, but it's staying with me.
Wow, that's quite some experience. Just what came to my mind is, how did you find the balance in that period when you was writing 200 articles for that year alongside a full-time job? Like, was it enjoyable or was that really stressful? It sounds quite full on.
It was both. I remember, because obviously one of the reasons I moved to Fratello in Europe was that the place where we would have editorial meetings each Monday, my 5:40 in the morning. I would get up, sneak out of bed, get down, do the editorial meeting with a coffee, finish that, make breakfast for the family, and then after that start my normal job, and then carry on writing a bit here and there during the day, and then in the evenings, and then basically I was working. Now I try not to work on Saturdays, but basically there is a little bit of work or a little bit of messaging or stuff all the time, but I'm just being very flexible. I work more and I enjoy it more. And sometimes can seem like an uncertain lifestyle, but I'm just enjoying it hugely. And I didn't think I would at this. I'm not going to say how old I am, but yeah, enjoying it, keeping very, very busy.
And then that's my next question. How old are you? No, that's a joke. Okay, so having written so many articles on obviously so many watches, I mean, I don't know how much overlap you've had, and being the not self-proclaimed contrarian, but you have been called a contrarian in your time. What led to that? And do you think having reviewed so many watches just made you bored of the conventional ones? And then also tell us about your contrarian journey and what you like and what you don't like and why.
I think it's in my nature. Norway is a very boring country. It's a very small country, full of lovely people, but obviously you buy the car that your neighbor has, and you paint your house the same color as the neighbor. And I've always been the one, when everyone buys estate cars, I would buy a saloon. Everyone buys an SUV, I would buy an estate car. Everyone went to see the Lord of the Rings, I would wait until it got onto the telly. So I've always been the ones not being that interested in what people think of me. And for some reason, my wife is the same. So I don't know. And obviously writing about watches, that sort of carries on to a different thing, because for me, the joy of collecting watches and writing about watches goes hand in hand. And I think the joy is in variety, and then finding value in things which are not expensive, and enjoying quality and design, which doesn't have to be equated to, the normal grails that you see on bloody Instagram.
But I think I have something similar there. It's a certain point with watches where you just get tired of maybe always seeing the mainstream, especially I think during like we touched on it a little bit near the start, like the pandemic period of time. It was certainly a lot of hype at that period. The watch market was going through the roof. It was a big trend, obviously, behind Rolex. And to be clear, I am a big fan of Rolex, but at a certain point, it was getting tiring around certain models. And it does make you want to break away and just, I'm sick of this. I don't want to be like all these flippers. So you just want something completely different, right? And yeah, I can resonate with that, because that's something I certainly did, to the degree of maybe going too far. and I think Pam will comment on this, but I went as far as going for an azimuth, Mr. Roboto. I don't know if you know that particular reference, but that's how crazy I went.
Yeah. No,
Maybe
but I
too
get
far.
that, and I'm like, and for me, that's like is such a big part of the enjoyment. And obviously, I have watches that I've bought and sold, not to make a profit, but because I love the variety, and I'll always have like maybe 15, 20, 25 watches or something in my collection, but there'll be a certain rotation, and there'll be some pieces that stick, and they might not be the obvious ones. And that's why for me, that's like, it's like finding value in something else. I also find that the contrarian like streak also goes against myself and my own writing about watches. Like, I love small watches, and I love 37 millimeter, 36, 38 millimeter watches. And I've been writing articles for like, 3 years, bashing big watches and being big on surfing the big tsunami size wave of retro love with the small watches. And then some watches just turn you around, and you get really surprised, because now, and that obviously, the one I'm wearing today, which is the Aera D1, which is a diver from a British company, that is a 44 millimeter watch. And if you told me
That's
that,
interesting then.
and if you told me that 2 years ago, I would never wear a watch of that size. And I got it in for review, and it is a watch which I'm wearing today. Is a 44 millimeter watch at the bezel. This one here, 44 millimeters at the bezel, but like Seiko with their divers, the emphasis on the ergonomics makes it completely different. Opening the box, I was quite intimidated by the size, but it's got an elliptic shaped case, so it actually narrows in. So it's 44 millimeters at the bezel. The case is about a tad over 42 millimeters, but the base of the watch is about 40. And then it's got the magic touch of the thing that I always question every brand. Why do you not understand that, lugs that actually go down further than the case back? So this is a watch, 44 millimeters, and with an FKM rubber strap, which is supple, and it's form fitted, and it just hugs the wrist. And I just put it on, and I love small watches, and I love colorful dials. And this one is completely monochrome, but it's so crisp. It's got this sort of Leica-like quality. And the case, despite being a watch that costs less than £2,000, it's a watch which has a 904L steel case, which you know about Palm from your GMT Master. There is a difference. There's a difference in that the way that steel feels on the skin, and the way that it takes on a different luster. And to get that in a watch that costs less than 2,000 quid, I think it's just brilliant. And that will swap places on my wrist with a Corona, which is 37 millimeters. And I put it on, and it looks huge. And I have it on for 2 seconds, and it's like, it just feels at home, like, instantly.
That's really interesting, because that, if you look at that watch, that is very, you could almost call it generic diver looking, but the ergonomics are very, I get it. The connection you can make with it makes a huge difference.
It's also the fact that I'm more and more, I'm starting to lean onto the more modern designs of watches, because I'm feeling that we're nearing a peak of the vintage wave, which we're still on. I still love vintage watches and modern retro loving vintage watches, but this is like, it's got a pure modernity about it. It's got like a matte black dial, which is dished, so it's a one-piece dial, and it's got a ceramic bezel, but it's so crisp and clean and legible. It's got a pared back sort of design to it, which just makes it, I keep comparing it to a Leica, because I always, I also shoot some of the watches that I do reviews of, and it's just, you put it on, it feels at home, it's honest, and it's just a simple, very legible watch, and it's got a big proper punching above its price band quality to it.
Okay, well, bang for buck. That's
Yeah, really.
But would you say now it sounds to me like you almost look for more appreciation in the actual design of the watch and how well thought through that design is? Because you talk a lot about the lugs and yeah.
To me, it's like once you've tried on a watch, you tried on some watches. This to me is like like the big Seiko divers, which are like the big watches. They're super comfortable, but then you have icons like the Speedmaster. Except for the latest one, I cannot get it to fit properly on my wrist because I have a medium-sized wrist, which is almost 18 centimeters, and it's got that floaty feeling with the lugs that are like way higher up than the case back. And then you have this, which is a fairly new company, but the emphasis is on the design and on the ergonomics, and it just makes a huge difference. And even just the fact that they've gone for the costly version of an FKM rubber strap, which doesn't attract any dust. It feels like it's got this warm sensation when you put it on, and it's soft and it's supple. And all these articles are written about watches that, it's 42 millimeters, but it wears smaller. Usually that's not the case, but I'll wear this one day. It feels equally at home on my wrist as a 37 millimeter Grand Seiko in a completely different price band.
Just for the listeners at home, if you want to see pictures of this very interesting diver, check out our website at www.chronopassion7.com, where you'll see all pictures from the show in the show notes. Open up a browser now and just go straight there and have a look. You won't be disappointed. And another thing, Thor, how is this Contrarian then? What's the Contrarian aspect to this watch? What goes against the grain with this one?
Not to mention the big retro wave that we're still on. This is like pure contemporary design. And it's more like an Apple Watch of the mechanical world, but it's this sort of purity and the back to basics, but with details and materiality where they haven't looked at the budget when they designed the watch, and still they managed to make a watch which is very accessible. And obviously, wearing this, I'm even like being contrarian to myself, writing the articles about small watches is the thing, and now they're just shrinking, and you've got 34, 35, 36 millimeters. I love those watches, but obviously the fact that I can get this to work, which is so comfortable, even something that 2 years ago I would have looked at as a huge watch and not even considered, but then trying it on just turned me around basically. And obviously there's also the thing about small watches and that there's also a seasonality, I think, in watches. Obviously big watches in the winter with shirts and jumpers and stuff doesn't work that well, but if I see 3 stories on a new Rolex or a new Omega on Watchicity or whatever, I will go home and put on my 34 millimeter orange with an orange strap Casio FW90, which is a 25 quid watch. And it brings a lot of joy in its simplicity and the fact that it's not waterproof, but I'll still swim with it.
Well,
Casios are so robust, right?
Yeah, that F91W it's the first watch I bought for my son when he was like starting school, a black one, and then the orange one. I bought it just for the hell of it. I put it on and I was like, wow, and it's like so legible. It's so crystal clear, and it's like £25, and it fits and it works for everything. It never breaks. It's waterproof, even if it says it's not. And it's just yeah.
So what you go to when the industry's getting a bit too much, you're having too many mainstream watches pushed at you. That's your kind of, hey, I'm going to escape.
Yeah, I've been in a meeting where I know the one I'm having a meeting with, the boss, when I was having my sales day job. I knew the manager had a Rolex or a Patek or whatever. I would be there in a suit with the Casio, the orange Casio popping out from under the cuff. And to me, that just brought me like an immense joy. And obviously, it's still a real watch. It's not Garmin or an Apple Watch, lovely as they are. But I'm in this techie country up north. I go to the shops. I'm in a queue for the tills, and there are like 7 men. I'm the only one with a real watch on my arm. The other ones will be like 2, one with a Garmin, one with an Apple Watch,
Mhm.
and the other ones with nothing. And I see myself as a sort of missionary of a kind, even if it's with the Casio.
Yeah, crusader for what
Yeah.
real watches. This is your meditation watch, I guess, right? This is what you bring inner peace and calm,
Yeah.
tranquility. And the funny thing is, this is sparked something that just made me think of something. When you're not really a watch person and you see someone with a Casio, what pops into your head would be like, oh, it's a bit of like a child's watch, or it's a, what's that? But when you're a proper watch person, well, when you're as into watches as we are, Casios are just like amazing. There's no way a person who loves watches would look at it and think, oh, it's a child's watch, or that's this watch, or it's a that watch. You will get credit, respect for wearing a Casio, and there's just some charm about it. It's almost become like its own. It's elevated itself to this celestial status for people. I don't want to use the old the God tier quote, but it's let's not say celestial then, but it's taken itself to a point where you have a Casio, you hold your head up as high as you want to.
Almost a cult following behind Casio.
Yeah, but with everyone, who loves watches, yeah.
Yeah, just respect. You can't not respect a Casio.
When I go on holiday, I will get incredibly frustrated if I forget to bring like more than 1 or 2 watches. I'll usually go, if it's like a week, I'll still go with like 2 or 3 watches. If I go on a 2-week holiday down to the sunny parts of Europe, I'll bring maybe 3 watches, and there'll always be the one travel watch, which is the one I set the other watches from, and that will be the burgundy reddish steel Casio G-Shock with the steel bracelet, which has got the Bluetooth, the connectivity, the 4-band radio signal, blah, blah, blah. Push a button, you're in the right time zone. And that will be the setting the standard for the timing of the other watches. And that will be the one I'm wearing when I'm traveling, like always.
That's funny. Talk about quartz. Like in my watch box, it's an 8-watch box, 7-hour automatic. 1 is quartz. My tank most is quartz. Because in rotation, they're not going to be still ticking. I always set them to the tank. The tank is like my little reference point sitting in there. It's quite funny how we spend all this money on these really expensive watches, and yet I could put a Casio in there and be even more accurate. That's the craziness.
And that's a proper quartz grail, the Gautier.
Yeah, I love that. I love that watch. Yeah,
it's a sigh of relief, I think, sometimes when all your watches need winding, and then you've just got the little quartz piece sat there. You're like, yeah, let's just go with that. Just set it, forget it. Right? Classic quotation in our world, but it's true, right? It's just nice to have that.
Obviously, and it's solar, so I'll just like wear it, and I might leave it on the windowsill to get a bit of a charge. Being stuck inside here in the office writing all bloody day. So yeah. But obviously, I still have a thing about the I don't know. I used to be very big into vintage watches, but I sort of rediscovered it now with buying the Omega Constellation that you saw when I met you at the Geneva Watch Days.
Great piece. Yeah.
So just for our listeners, we met Thor at the LVMH tour in Geneva for Geneva Watch Days. No one really knew each other, and by the end of it, we connected so well with Thor. It was just, and we knew the show today was going to be like this. We're going to start off a little bit. Everyone's just feeling each other out, and then it's just get ready for just some serious conversation going in 20 different directions, because that is what real watch talk is. We will go back to the Contrarian watches though, but no, that Thor, again, thanks for coming on as well. It's just, I'm glad the listeners going to hear our crazy ramblings.
And Andy's feeling a lot better than when he was at that tour, because he was like very, very, very car sick.
Oh yeah, let's leave it at that. Yeah, that was a rough journey. It was a rough journey.
It wasn't funny, but
it's a trend. Pam knows this trend with me in cars. Yeah, and it's always linked.
And he has motion sickness,
and it doesn't help.
No, this was that. But ironically, that the Constellation. Obviously, I have like 5 watches next to me here, getting like my cheat sheet. The Constellation, which is this one, which is this series, is called the Constellation 95, because that was like the year it came out. And this was this is from 1997, bought pre-owned from Japan. always buy your pre-owned watches from Japan because the standard is hugely different from anything. And ironically, it was bought in Surfer's Paradise in Australia in 1997.
Oh, really?
Oh, wow.
And that sort of goes into my contrarian streak, because obviously, I shouldn't say this, but I've been writing for Fratello for like 3 years. Fratello is very big on the Speedmasters that we know very well. And Robert Jan is one of the consummate and very accomplished Speedmaster collector. I've never found them to fit that well on my wrist. So this is after writing an article in Fratello about which Omega should I buy, because I feel like I need one being part of the Fratello team. And one of the watches on the list was the Constellation. And I actually started looking into it, and I was like, it's actually a really good watch. And for some reason, it's a really undervalued sleeper, especially in these days where we are hugely enamored with the integrated bracelet watches. And this is an integrated bracelet watch with a lovely bracelet, which has got these Tony Trainer from Hodinkee, thank you, gadroons, these pins.
Is that what he calls them? Is that the real name, or is that what Tony Trainer
called gadroons in accordance with Tony Trainer of Hodinkee? About the Piaget Polo. So this is a similar style bracelet to the Piaget Polo 79, but these watches are incredibly solid. They wear like magic, and you get them for less than £2,000, which is completely mad. Insane. And this is like the bracelet. This is a like a 25-year-old watch. The bracelet, you hold the watch out like horizontally. There's like a millimeter of flex in the bracelet. And it's obviously used to be a chronometer certified watch. And I got no idea when it had the last service. This runs like COSC close. This runs like plus minus bloody 8 seconds a day for a watch from 1997. And it wears like a miracle. And it's 35 millimeters. It's a small, lovely watch.
It's beautiful. We saw this in Geneva. Thor was wearing it. Do you think that's because of the excellent workmanship of Omega, or you got lucky with finding this piece, or a bit of both?
To me, the quality of this and the quality of a few extra links that I've had from Germany, the workmanship is absolutely superb. It's got a bit of wear here and there, so I can tell that it's been used properly. But even with that, I've never come across a bracelet from before 2000 which has got this integrity. It's integral. Sorry about the pun. It's just so solid, and it wears supple. It's got this sliding release thing on the bracelet, and there's like no slack at all in the mechanism. There's a spring, and it's tight, like it came out from the Beale factory from Omega bloody yesterday.
That's top. Wow. You know, the biggest mistake I did. So I've had a Constellation, but I purchased a more modern iteration. I bought the Double Eagle, which was I think it was the first mass-produced Omega coaxial movement, which was housed in that. So that was kind of cool, and I think I talked myself into it a little bit by, well, this is a cool claim to have, right? It's got this movement, and it's got that story, and I wanted to... I'm similar to yourself, a massive vintage guy, maybe gone too far down that rabbit hole. And then in that period of time, I was trying to pull myself out a little bit, get something a bit more modern and sporty. But you know what? The mistake was, I wish I bought a reference like yours, because I found it too heavy and it was so thick. And the bracelet, what's on yours, is so beautiful. Like, it's just thin and well made. As it's extremely well made on the Double Eagle, but it's so thick, it felt like I was wearing like a thick cuff. It felt really restrictive. And if I was out having dinner, I was taking it off and putting it on the table. And that's when I was like, this isn't right for me, because I'm taking the watch off.
This is like, I don't know, it's like 9 millimeters something thick. It's like 9 millimeters. And it's 35 millimeters. But the actual bracelet where it meets the case on this cushion-shaped case, where it meets the bracelet case, it's almost 23 millimeters. It wears like a cuff, and it wears a lot larger than its 35 millimeters, but it's still like super, super, super comfortable. And that just really surprised me. And I sort of bought it almost on the whim, and I got it out of the box from Japan. And I was like, wow, this is just like, how can this be so solid? It was like a watch from 2019.
No, it's brilliant. That was my mistake. I wish I got yours. And you've just sold it to me again. After we met as well.
We were all we were on Chrono 24.
Chrono 24, yeah. And he offered me a two-tone for like €800.
Wow.
A little while ago, and then I was like, I put that on IG. I was like, damn, I should have bought that. Like, what a mistake.
I think you get them in solid gold for about $7,000, and that's a tenth of the Polo 79. That's a tenth.
And it says
that's what I would get. Yeah, the gold is what I'd go for. Forget a day date. Get something like that.
I think that's a palm watch. I could see you with a solid gold constellation.
Yeah, I can see myself with that. I did think that. I mean, I've looked in the past in secret, and after we met as well, I was just the gold, because I think there's a time where you need a gold watch, but it has to be the right one, because you don't want to overspend and you don't want to just get something that you're not going to resent. Yeah. You just need value. I love value. So that's again another feather in the cap for that one.
Yeah.
And it's like ironic to me. It's also ironic because this is probably this is the only big brand Swiss watch I have, and I have more than 20. The only other big brand watch I have is a Grand Seiko, which I love dearly, and I've had like 3 or 4 of them. But I've always been more into the independents, which is why I love Geneva watch days like my mom. I mean, I'd swap Watches and Wonders for that like any day. In fact, this year I didn't get to go to Watches and Wonders, but Geneva watch days, I just wouldn't miss it. I mean, even if with the stratospherically priced hotels, which I paid myself, and the scorching heat, it's just such an intimate atmosphere, and it sort of encapsulates the whole appeal of the smaller brands. Even like my watch from Aera, and micro brands and independent brands, is the fact that you get you can actually talk to the manufacturer or the designer of the watch. You can talk to the brand, you can talk to the people, and it's not a big organization that you can't, your Batman palm is beautiful, but the bigger brands are quite aloof, so you can't really get that connection, that personal sort of intimate connection is just amazing when you can get it.
That's true, because you could, in Geneva Watch Days, you go to the famous tent in the evening, and you could pretty much talk to 50 to 60% of the CEOs easily in that tent. They'll give you at least some of their time, if not more than expected. But absolutely. You go to Watches and Wonders, it's not happening. It's not unless, even there, everyone's too busy as well. But then there's also the huge brands just don't do that.
It's only the smaller brands where you see the CEOs. Yeah, it's true.
I've actually got another independent brand like watch that sort of threw me in terms of the size, which is a 42 millimeter watch with a very, very, very slim bezel, and obviously that makes the watch look even bigger, because a dive watch, which is 44 millimeter with a big dive bezel, when you have a 42 millimeter watch with a very slim bezel, it looks like a huge watch. But again, this Chinese-based brand called Behrens that make watches with a sort of MB&F type look. This is one of their watches.
Cool.
Which is like a regulator style watch.
Did we do the collaboration with Jakin?
Yeah, this is the same basic. This is the same case. This is the same case. The Behrens one was a crystallized titanium something. This is a steel case, 42 millimeters. It's got this sort of satellite type display with the moon phase, the hours, minutes, and a sweeping seconds hand, and then a main dial in the background, which is aventurine with like constellations on, and that main dial is actually the date wheel. So it rotates like a tiny notch like every 24 hours. And this is a watch which costs like less than, I don't know, it costs around £3,000, and they make watches for like £10,000 and £15,000, but you get like a, you things
can
like
get
that.
The good, well-priced ones, can you? Okay, that's awesome.
Yeah.
Some amazing value.
Just going back to the Contrarian watches, is this one of them, or you like your Japanese watches, don't you?
It's another big watch in the world of small watches. See it next to my lovely Corona here, which is 37. This is like 42, and it looks bigger because it's got this thin bezel. But for some reason, it's a watch that, I put it on and it fits beautifully because it's got ergonomics, not just a pretty dial. And it's modern. Modern design is, to me, that's quite important. And obviously...
So, I just want to ask a question there. I've just thought of. Ergonomics sounds like it's a very important thing for yourself. And I think it should be for all people who wear watches, because you're wearing your watch pretty much the whole day and through pretty much everything you do during that day. Is ergonomics or aesthetics more important to you, do you think? What do you think makes... Okay, people have a watch, but then they get bored with it and then they move it on and then they get another one. And then the ergonomics, does that help you connect? Do you think that's something that makes you actually really connect with something and think, right, okay, I just like having this on my wrist and I would miss this being present rather than the look of it?
That's funny because that ties into my contrarian thing again, because to me the aesthetics is always the one, that's the thing that pulls me in. And I'm like a dialed man. I'm not really that deeply interested in the movements, to be honest. In some cases I am, but that takes something spectacular. Whether it's to me in a watch that costs less than £5,000, if that's got an ETA, Suprod, La Jouperet movement, Miyota movement, to me it doesn't really matter anymore. It matters what the thought put into the watch and the design, and a lot of cases the actual dial and the ergonomics. But the aesthetics is always what gets me. But but after many years of watches, you recognize that a watch which is 46 millimeters with a 51 millimeter lug to lug stretch is going to wear like a bloody brick on my wrist, and it's not going to fit. So I'm like, look at it, I'm thinking, wow, that's beautiful, but I can never wear it. But you get to see these little things, even if the lug stretch is long, if the lugs are actually curved, like on these Barons again, the lugs come down a millimeter further than the actual case back. Why is that so bloody difficult to get? I don't understand. When the lugs go straight out, that is equal to uncomfortable wear.
So you're not a fan of Chrono Swiss then? Because their lugs are long.
Some watches are really long, and there's a Norwegian brand which I won't mention, which has got 51, 52 millimeter lugs. I'm like, my wrist is like 18 centimeters, and when you wear a watch and the strap goes straight down or even a slightly inwards to hold your wrist, there's something wrong. I like seeing the watch and actually seeing a part of the strap on each side. To me, that's a sign of a good design.
Yeah, so I'm going to do the classic now. So we said we're going to stay the conversation all over. So I want to link back, like you mentioned, we're kind of at that peak of the vintage trend. So I'm guessing that's vintage inspired designs, of course. Also, vintage is kind of popular at the moment. We had the oversized watches. We've gone to, you could say, the extreme opposite to more undersized. Where do you feel, and this is a question to both of you, where do you see the market going? Where do you feel it's going next? Where's the next direction? Is it more purity and ergonomic design? more minimalist, or like where do you see it? Where do you think is more of going to be more of a shift of independence, maybe taking more of a lead as well in the upcoming years? So that's an open question.
Thor, you can
maybe
go
a
first.
tough one.
As our guest, yeah. As our guest, I've got an idea on what I think.
No,
yeah, as our guest, you go first, please.
To me, I've seen this massive rise in independence, and what used to be niche brands are now popular, and the fact that the auction records for the last couple of years, which are not necessarily setting the bar for the whole market, but when independent watches from FP Journo beat Patek and Rolex prices at auction and don't go down when the rest of the prices and values dip, is a huge sign of that, which I really appreciate. And obviously this year, which has been like a stagnant year, I just did a story on the Swatch group and the Citizen group for Revolution, a big story which was based on the numbers from the Swiss Federation on the first half of the year, which basically shows, there's standing still. The markets are still dropped in Asia by like 20% in Hong Kong and China, and the rest is going up by like 3, 4, 5%. But the independent brands and what they showed us in Geneva for the Geneva Watch Days, there's no stopping them, and they're just on the rise, and they're doing watches that cost, from £50,000 up to 200,000, and they're selling, and they're doing limited editions, like a brand I really appreciate, which is Laurent Ferrier, which is a deep favorite of mine. Obviously, their watches start at about £40,000-50,000. To me, the perceived quality and the craftsmanship is on a completely different level from similar watches from big brands. But they did a limited edition with a very quirky dial, a quirky design for Geneva Watch Days. I think they did about 20 or 40. They're all sold out. So this just proves, and this is in a quiet year where some of the brands are like really struggling to get traction, but the independents keep coming up with things. And a lot of what we saw in Geneva was modern. You still see the vintage inspired designs and stuff, and I'm still seeing it at the micro brands. But that's also because, take a brand like Aera with this modern watch. It costs a lot more to design a modern watch with a modern case design because there's no off-the-shelf parts to use. You can copy a design, you can have an off-the-shelf case and tweak it and stuff. But I'm seeing that. I'm seeing modernity, and you're seeing imaginative designs from brands that have watches that cost over $100,000. And at the same time, the big brands are doing super safe releases where they've changed a dial color, changed maybe a bezel or a bracelet, while the smaller brands are really pushing the accelerator.
Yeah, that's well summarized. Off the question, I've actually forgotten again. What was the question?
To repeat the question, I'll do a short iteration of it. Market trends. So it's been vintage, right? It's been a bit of a vintage theme at the moment. What's next, basically? Where do you see the trend within the market? What styles? Is it going to, we're at the peak of vintage inspired? What's next? What do you
inspired
feel?
In terms of styles or collectors? Because I've got a view on the whole style.
The whole thing. Like, obviously, it's been a big thing with vintage is huge as well as collections, and inspired as well in modern watches looking like old watches, right? But what's next? What's the next big move, shake up in the industry? What's coming next is basically what I was getting at. Okay. Where do you see it?
Well, independence. I see independence getting more popular, and I see brands like Furlan Marri becoming popular and coming in at a good price. Like Space One are becoming very popular. They're coming in at a very good price, and this is the perfect time for them to establish themselves because the hype has gone. The investor market, I'm holding my fingers up in air quotes, is crashing. I do think, again, when I was saying about vintage, I think not the new, but the most investment-y area now is vintage, because there's a lot of changing. Like, have you got this? I've got that. Oh, this. And there's also value proposition, and I think there's also a bit of flex and collectability, and these things move around quite quickly as well. In terms of the dial change, you were saying, Thor. So you have your investors, your enthusiasts, and your collectors. Collectors, I think, independents, high-end independents, they will become more and more established with them, I think, in time. If investors are kind of leaving the pot, I think they're looking for something new. Where I think vintage is possibly where they're looking because of the rarity and the prices people may pay. Enthusiasts, I think the change of dial, your entry level people, or people who don't have so much to spend, or people who just think, I like this, and there's a white Speedmaster, or there's a Baltic with a stone dial. And Baltic's another perfect example of a really well priced independent brand. They're not doing anything that's really pulling up any trees, but they're popular and they're different. They're just putting their name out there at the right time.
I love that. I love that. Yeah, the stone dial is just gorgeous. That was a great move. Funny you mentioned Furlan Marri. That's one of the. I've actually got 3 Furlan Marris.
Oh, really? Okay, yeah. That's
and that's just there's great value in some of the small brands.
Yeah, and I think this is a good opportunity for them. In 5 years, if they play it right and they treat their customers well, they could be not replacing, but they could be alongside. They could fall into that enthusiast category, I think, which is pretty much Omega, Rolex, Breitling, the big brands that people are always going to go to because I want a nice watch, or I've got this one and I want this dial now as well. But I'm hoping the independents can. It's because of the challenges with production. I'm not sure they will quite get there, but they definitely will grow, and I hope they get more investment and invest more into doing what they do as well. I don't know if that answers the question or not.
Obviously, it's not a fantastic year, and last year wasn't fantastic either. And obviously, with me having this sort of, I do root for the British brands like a lot, in addition to the Swiss and the
there's them
Japanese,
as well.
Obviously seeing things like In a Quiet Year, a big British brand of tool watches that did some big changes to their lineup, which to not everyone were seen as amazing, and then they reported a loss of bloody £10 million last year. So
Bremont.
Yeah, that was Bremont. To me, I loved what they did before. I'm not too keen on the new stuff, all of it, changing the logo, all that. But they've done some really nice watches, and I don't know, maybe, and moving into a different price range where, at the same time, slightly lower down, where other brands like Aera, with their sort of pure modernity, are moving up and without all the baggage. So it's interesting to see how things are going.
Yeah, British brands are definitely like Fears. Christopher Ward appointed a COO. Their structure is getting more and more mature and advanced financially as a corporate structure, as a business structure. Sorry, and I mean, I'm sure there's more brands coming up.
It's interesting, yeah. That brings. So we had Mo on, right, from Gaga Laboratorio. And we were talking about, is there going to be a bit of a shift with Italian watchmaking as well? Is that a space what can come into the industry? Because Italian watchmaking, you see a little flavors of it, but it's not quite as prominent as, say, the British at the moment.
Obviously, that one watch I mentioned first, the modernity thing, Unimatic has got they are a Italian watchmaker, and they have the modern thing with the minimalism and the clean cut designs, which to me I'm really, really into, even though they make a collaboration a week or something. It's quite a lot, and they're based in Milan. Gaga Laboratorio is beautiful. I sincerely wish that watch was a little bit smaller, and I'm not going to say how long the lugs look, but that is absolutely gorgeous, but not for my wrist, I think. And actually, a Swiss brand called Gerald Charles.
Yes,
the ones with the Genta designs, they're actually also Italian owned. So that's
Okay.
also very interesting. So
That's interesting. That is interesting. Yeah, that's.
It'd been nice to see, yeah. So more independence. So my takeaway from the question I asked is more of a shift towards independence, a shift to good value as well. I think that value proposition between 2
Yeah.
and 5K for a lot of normal collectors. I mean, you've got your high end collectors, of course, who can go to the extreme heights of a beautiful brand like Laurent Ferrier, which was mentioned earlier. But it does seem to be a shift on, well, first that British watchmaking, Italian watchmaking making a comeback, and independence making more of a rumble, let's say, within the industry, which is exciting because they bring the freshness, right? It's like a breath of fresh air. You're seeing something new, something different every time. And like you mentioned at Geneva Watch Days, it's like a playground for these independents.
that was obviously created as a stopgap pandemic thing by Jean-Christophe Babin of Bulgari, and that has sort of grown into a completely different thing. But it's all about the variety, and you've even got the small brands there. I mean, today I was finishing off a story for GQ on dress watches, and there was like 5 watches I added, and they were like, to me, equal in charm, and it started at less than $1,000 for the new Frederic Constant moon phase with the cheeky coin edge bezel on the inside of the crystal, and then up to a Vacheron of 20 grand, you know. But there's something for everyone, and it's just the fact, it's just getting people into watches again and getting them moved away from that, from the fact that watches have been seen as an asset to invest in, which to me is completely, it's just wrong. I mean, you know, buying 4 watches and putting them in the safe without even taking them out of the plastic wrapper, it's just, to me, is completely mad. Even though I do baby my watches, I must say, I'm the one who takes off the 500-meter diver before going to the beach and putting on the Casio. So I'm not wanting, but I wouldn't leave it in the safe. I would actually wear it.
No, that's very honest of you. But I think most people probably would do that. Oh no, this is my expensive watch. Let me put the one that I could go in the pool. You're not going to really go at any depth, really, but you just don't want to. It should be fine, but you just don't want to risk it.
Yeah.
No, I had the Seiko Marine Master 300, which is like a 200-meter watch, but 300-meter watch, and just like tough as nails, but still produced in the Grand Seiko factory and hand polished in the Grand Seiko factory with those mirror Zaratsu sides on the case. You know, on the beach, I got like one hairline scratch on it. I was almost crying. straight back to the hotel room.
You know, that watch is that's on my wish list. That watch. I remember, Palm. I've spoken to you about that. So
yeah,
it's
you
for unibody,
that,
right?
Yeah.
It's like a solid block. Yeah.
That is Andy, that bloody hell, that watch has got like Rolex finish to the dial and the indices and the hands, and the case is produced and regulated at the Grand Seiko factory with the Grand Seiko undecorated movement, and the quality and the dial details, it's just insane. I had a blue one for ages. I sold it to get something else, which I can't quite remember, but that one is one I seriously missed. And that was like to me, that was the final step of like a long journey of Seikos. And that was like the final one, the peak.
Wow. Yeah, you're not the first person to say that. So there was a trend behind that watch amongst my friends here in Barcelona. Like at least 2 friends here had, you know, the Marine Masters. I like, it looks cool, but what I get what's special about it, like with the finishing and the movement and everything. And then they're like, no, you need to see it. Like the quality, like they said exactly what you just said. Like it's to the Rolex standard, and I still haven't handled one, even though I had friends with it. It was in the summer season, so we're like, oh, we bought this for the summer. We're on holiday. By the time we met up, but as bad as us, like just sold it and moved on to something else. But yeah, or traded up or traded sideways, whatever it may be. But yeah, it's definitely on my radar, and it seems a good value proposition. Once again, the price point. It's weird, right? Because some people would say that price point's too expensive for a Seiko. As I see it, as it's a bargain for what's almost a Grand Seiko. So it's really on your perspective.
Yeah, it's basically a Grand Seiko without the badge.
That's incredible.
It is, because it is that the finishing is just it's mad. You know, it's really lovely, because I've had that side by side with a Grand Seiko or two in the collection, and it just measures up. Yeah,
Great. That's another one back on the radar.
Yeah, there you go, people. Look up the Seiko Marine Master 300. Is it Professional 300? Look that one up and
300.
Well, it's not called that anymore. Now it's called it's called something else. It hasn't really got the name, but the name still sticks. And now they started using the name of some. Yeah, anyway, but it's called the SBDC 043JU1
classic
or something.
Seiko name, what nobody can remember.
I can't remember. They've got all these references.
Okay, yeah,
I think it's not quite.
Let's call it Marine Master.
If you go on Google, type Marine Master 300M, you'll find it. You'll find it. Yeah, around 3,000. From memory, I think actually less. I think you can pick them up for like 2,700, 2,600 if you're lucky. And they have a beautiful green dial variant.
Yeah.
I think that was like a boutique or online edition or something. That was really beautiful.
That's lovely. Buy that one pre-owned from a dealer in Japan. The yen is really low, and at the same time in Japan they have huge standards and integrity for pre-owned sales, and they have really strict regulations too. So the quality of what comes out of their pre-owned of what I bought is just a completely different league. And it takes, it might take a day longer to get from Tokyo than to get from Germany. And it's just worth every hour of the extra weight.
Wow. Okay. Well, I think that's all we have time for, which is a shame, because we could have got into Seiko there. I could sense a Seiko conversation.
The itch comes.
Thor,
right?
Yeah. You're coming. You need to.
I've got a Grand Seiko here. I've got a Corono that I could talk about for ages.
Japanese watches. Next show, you come back on for another show, and we'll talk Japanese watches or whatever we can think of at the time.
We don't talk Japanese, but we talk about
Japanese watches, Japanese independent watches, Japanese like Corono and stuff like that. I have a couple of that I've snuck out of Japan, which are not really meant for export.
Le Jour Pareil is owned by a Citizen Group, isn't it? So it's there's a lot going on in Japan.
Citizen huge value.
A lot going on.
Yeah, the Japanese, Japanese watches. I'll just compare it I'll just compare it to cars. I mean, I've been driving BMW for years. My wife has got a small Lexus now. The quality is the same, if not better. I'm not, same with the watches. It's just like parallels. They have such integrity in the way they work with things, and the whole ethos of always doing their best and designing something without even thinking about what the price tag is going to be once it's finished. Always making the best, always trying to make the best design, the best finish. It's just completely different. And they are, and lovely people to deal with.
Different mindset, different work ethos.
Absolutely.
We hope you've enjoyed yourself. And like I said, let's have you on again.
Thank you. I'd love to.
It's been an absolute pleasure from my side as always. And looking forward for part 2. And who knows where that conversation... We set the topic. Who knows where it goes?
Yeah.
But that's it.
And 3 and 4. Yeah, let's just keep this regular.
Exactly. So I guess to do my sign off, first of all, to find out all about these incredible watches we have been discussing, they will all be on the show notes. We really encourage you to, if you got this far through our mad ramblings, go on the website, listen to the audio and scroll through the images, and you can really see what we're describing as you listen. So it truly is the best audio visual experience. So go to www.chronopassion7.com for that experience. And I will do my classic sign off. That's hasta luego and adios from Barcelona. And I'll speak to you all in the next one.
Thank you all so much for listening. And I now believe that I am a contrarian in watches, and that Rolex and Omega is the ultimate contrarian mindset, because nobody likes them if you're a real enthusiast. So on that note, from London, It's Toodle Pip and laters, and we'll see you and you'll hear us in the next one.